on the schedule that I would make some observations and pose some questions for tomorrow's Charrette. I'll just say a number of things. I'll just say mention a couple things that struck me today, and these are things that came up multiple times. One is there's need to push the envelope on copyright. It's standing in the way of our dealing with collections. It's standing in the way of our preservation and reformatting of collections. It just has to be done on a bigger scale. Trust did terrific. The Authors Guild decision was very useful, and we need to push it farther because there's much more literature that's post-1945 that needs to be preserved. In fact, a couple of the speakers this afternoon talked about the fact that it's the new books that are going into storage, into off-site storage, and so out of sight and out of mind. He thought that Susan Gibbons' comment about the RLG Brittle Books microfilming project back in the 80s and 90s when that was taking place, and that the kind of fact that those microfilm masters have now been orphaned, and that comes back to we're now into the second round of preserving the same things over again. We've noticed in doing our analysis of newspaper digitization that most of the newspapers that are getting digitized today are being put into big newspaper databases, including the National Digital Newspaper Project, are newspapers that have already been microfilmed. And so we're not, we can't consider those things. Those are big investments. We can't really consider them preservation projects to any great extent. They are making materials available, and that's great. That's important for scholarship, but it's not addressing the body of material out there that's never been microfilmed and it's continuing to age very, very rapidly. And also thought I'm struck by the Gwen Bird's mention of the small, relatively new library having a role in this, in the larger preservation program, and that I think that's quite true. The smaller, newer institutions can be very distinctive in terms of their collections as well. Not just that you wouldn't assume they just have the new stuff that's recent, but a number of the volumes that we've gotten, CRL has gotten for its JSTOR archive, are coming actually from small liberal arts college libraries. And so that's a role that they've been playing in helping assemble a relatively comprehensive archive of JSTOR materials. For some reason, it was easier to extract this material from those libraries than it was to extract them from larger libraries. So that's I think going back to the microfilm thing, though, is that I think my sense is that there's just so much out there to be concerned about that a couple people said today. All right. A couple people said today that there's really too much to cover. We can't save everything. But if we factor in what's been microfilmed as part of the corpus and say, all right, we've got that, despite there being specks and vinegar syndrome and that kind of thing in those microfilms, that can we say that covers that territory? Can we say that that's going to have to be good enough for our purposes? And it's something we'll talk about tomorrow. We invited two publishers to come, ProQuest and Gale, people from both those places to come, because we're very interested in what's in their vaults. Both of these companies were started as micro-formatters or micro-publishers, and they actually were able to obtain access to very important bodies of material, serials, newspapers, and journals held in libraries, and capture them in microform back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. And it'd be nice if we knew it was there so we could stop worrying about that stuff. And there's enough stuff that's never been microfilmed that we need to worry about, and it would be nice to not have to worry about those things. It'd be great to know it seems to me what's in Google's pipeline. Google is plays their cards very close to the vest, and they have not been historically very open to sharing even metadata on what they've digitized already, let alone what their intention is. to digitize. But if we knew a little bit more about that, then maybe that's stuff we could worry a little bit less about. Not stop worrying about, but worry about it a little bit less. The others, and Mike mentioned that there's actually subject areas that they've declared that are important to them or priorities for them, and I wonder, I don't know how far they disclose those or how much, to what extent they disclose those things. It's competitive information, I guess, but it could be useful for the community in our planning. Something that came up again and again too is that link between digitization and preservation, and it's, maybe you can't do preservation without digitization. Maybe that the value or the information that's generated in the process of digitization is too important for preservation not to link your preservation efforts on that. I think that's, in a way, that's the way Hathi Trust operates. They have a big digitization project and a lot of digital assets, and now they're building print archiving onto that. Maybe that's a successful approach. Maybe that's the killer app for that. So I think Jim also talked about engaging the commercial sector, and tomorrow we will talk a little bit. As I said, we do have 2 commercial publishers coming. We'll talk about what they can do, and I think that they can do a fair amount. We managed to CRL managed to partner with Redex on a digitization of foreign newspapers, which was a real orphan area of collections, and that's had some success. We can talk a little bit more about it tomorrow, about the limitations of it. We are seeing real limitations of it. It seems that when you think of digitization, when you think of preservation as being inextricably bound with digitization, at least as a strategy, then collection management becomes kind of a rear guard action, doesn't it? That collection management is really figuring out what to do with the stuff you've digitized already, or figure out what to do with the stuff that you're going to digitize, and that could save a great deal of money. So anyway, those are the things I picked up today, except for, some very inspiring things. We need to think creatively about curation. As Jim said, we need to define our horizon, our acceptable horizon for preservation. It can't be forever, because that's impossible to quantify the cost of that. So the 20 years or 25 years or 10 years, it may vary for different kinds of materials, different kinds of resources, but I think that's going to be a reality. So that's pretty much it for today. Thanks very much for participating today.